So while they're doing that, just on a staffing update with this, we still have one vacant dispatcher position, which we're in the middle of testing for. We have one vacant police officer position, which we have a candidate that just finished backgrounds. Raise your right hand. After I say aye, you state your name. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of California, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true.
Becoming a dispatcher, they have to take a test that I don't think 90% of working police officers could pass. It's amazing the testing process they go through. So welcome to both of you. We do have some proclamations, 5 of them. And I'm going to pass off 3 of them to my vice mayor, but I will give the first 2. So if you join me down here. The first proclamation is for Fleet. Who's going to accept that?
All the people in union.
Let's have some police officers up here. And I note we have a former law enforcement officer in Lauren who gave our invocation tonight, was with Fish and Game, now Fish and Wildlife for how many years? 18 years. We worked some assignments together back in the day. So being a retired police officer, I'm extremely proud and pleased to give this proclamation for Police Week 2019, whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Clearlake Police Department. And whereas there have been 60,211 assaults against law enforcement officers in 2017, resulting in approximately 17,476 injuries. Whereas the first recorded death in 1786, more than 21,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. Whereas the names of these dedicated public officials are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 371 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 158 officers killed in 2018 and 213 officers killed in previous years. Whereas May 15th is designated as Police Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and the U.S. flags were flown at half staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the Clearlake City Council formally designates May 12th through 18th, 2019 as Police Week in the city of Clearlake, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across this nation. Dated this 9th of May, 2019, and signed by me. Have a few words.
Yeah, I would just say that this is an important week for law enforcement throughout the United States. As he mentioned, all those before us that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, but also to those that have been attacked and injured in the line of duty. The good news in all of this is that our training continues to evolve. We invest a lot in training here at the Clearlake Police Department to make sure that these men and women make it home safe, but understand that they're all willing to pay that ultimate sacrifice if that's what it takes to protect the community. So my hat's off to all of them, as well as all the people that are behind them to support them and all of our support functions within the police department, our professional staff. We certainly couldn't do the job without them. And last but not least, we thank the public for their tremendous amount of support. That's what enables us to do this job day in and day out, and these people to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you. Tim, thank you much. How many veterans in our audience today? Stand up, please. Served in the military? Or currently serving? Awesome. I want to announce Military Appreciation Month, myself included. May of 2019. Whereas the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness enumerated in our Declaration of Independence, secured by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and enjoyed by every citizen of the United States, are direct results of the members of the United States Armed Forces. And whereas the sacrifices made by the members of the United States Armed Forces and the family members who support them preserve the liberties that enrich our nation, our state, and our city. And whereas our citizens have a proud history of service in the United States Armed Forces in both times of peace and times of war. And whereas many citizens in the city of Clearlake continue to serve on active duty and in the National Guard and in the reserve components of the United States Armed Forces, and now therefore be it proclaimed that the Clearlake City Council does hereby wish to recognize and honor all members of the United States Armed Forces, past and present, as well as their families, for their service and sacrifice, and hereby designates May 2019 as Military Appreciation Month in the city of Clearlake. Further, we encourage all citizens to show our gratitude by the appropriate display of flags and ribbons during the designated period, dated this night, day of May 2019, signed by me. Thank you very much.
The first proclamation I have is for Safe Boating Week. Is there some representatives of Flotilla 88 here, I think? If you could come up. When we get done, Hi. Okay, Safe Boating Week in Clearlake, May 18th through May 24th, 2019. Whereas in 2017, 658 people died in boating-related accidents in the United States. 449 of those fatalities were due to drowning, and 370 of these boaters would be alive today had they worn life jackets. And whereas contributing factors in fatal accidents were operator inattention, inexperience, excessive speed, and machine failure. Use of alcohol was the leading contributing factor at 15%. And whereas, where instruction was known, 81% of deaths occurred on boats where the operator did not receive boating safety instructions, and only 14% of deaths occurred in vessels where the operator had received an approved boating safety education certificate. And whereas approved boating safety classes continue to be offered by Flotilla 88 to assist boaters in obtaining a boater's card, to be in compliance with State Bill 941, effective January 1st, 2018, which prohibits the operation of motorized vessels with valid boaters care in California. And whereas Flotilla 88 of Lake County will continue its efforts to educate the boating public by offering classes, free vessel examinations, promote safe boating, and encourage the wearing of life jackets by everyone. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Clear Lake does hereby designate the week of May 18th through May 24th, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week in Lake County, and urges all users of Clear Lake, Lake Pillsbury, Blue Lakes, and Indian Valley Reservoir to safeguard their lives by wearing life jackets when boating, attend a safe boating course, exercise safe boating practices, and adopt the slogan, "Wear It." Dated 9th of May, 2019, signed by Mayor Nick Bennett.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce, I am Dorothy DeLaPay. I'm Public Affairs Officer, and this is,
I'm Gary Jolly. I'm the Vice Commander of Flotilla 88.
I'm Kevin Keeley. I'm on boat crew, Flotilla 88.
and Kevin is one of our newest members. He's dressed in his, what we call our ops.
Operational.
So if you see him out on the vessel doing patrol, that's what will be wearing. We are offering free vessel exams. You can bring your boat on a trailer or in the water to Redbud Park or Liberia Park in Lakeport on May 18th. Starting at 9 o'clock, they will be doing free vessel checks. And also we are offering a safe boating class on May 18th, and you can call it. There's an article in the paper, and you can call that number.
Yeah. Basically, our mission is recreational boating safety. That's what we try to do. We also assist the Sheriff's Department if called upon for search and rescue, and just overall safety out on the lake. As you know, we've had fatalities, and we don't want to have those, and so boating safety is paramount. So everyone should wear it and try to be safe when you're out on the water.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye, Sharon.
We'll see you on the lake. Okay, our next one is Public Service Appreciation Week. I don't know who should bring up the entire staff. May 5th through the 11th of 2019. Whereas our nation's progress has long been fueled by the efforts of selfless citizens who come together in service to their fellow Americans to change our country for the better, and whereas during Public Service Recognition Week, we honor those who dedicate themselves to ensuring America's promise rings true in every corner of our country, and we recommit to upholding the values they fight for every day. And whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels, including public works, planning and building, administrative services, finance department employees. These unsung heroes do the work that keeps our city working. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Day in and day out, they provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government, and with efficiency and integrity. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Clear Lake City Council does hereby designate May 5th through 11th, 2019 as Public Service Appreciation Week in the City of Clear Lake. All citizens are encouraged to recognize accomplishments and contributions of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and city. Dated this 9th day of May 2019, again signed by Mayor Bennett. Okay. Our last proclamation, are there any fire department representatives here by chance? Now, Willie told me they might be, if they got the call, that would, they would have to take that, so that's probably where they're at. At any rate, Firefighter Appreciation Day, dated May 4th, 2019. Whereas firefighters dedicate their lives to the protection of life and property, sometimes that dedication is in the form of countless hours volunteered over many years. In others, it is many selfless years working in the industry. In all cases, it risks the ultimate sacrifice of a firefighter's life. And whereas Firefighter Appreciation Day is a time where the community can recognize and honor the sacrifices that firefighters make to ensure that their communities and environment are as safe as possible. It is also a day in which current and past firefighters can be thanked for their contributions. And whereas by proudly wearing and displaying blue and red ribbons pinned together or by participating in a memorial or recognition event, we can show our gratitude to firefighters everywhere. Therefore, be it resolved that the Clearlake City Council formally designates May 4th, 2019 as Firefighter Appreciation Day in the city of Clearlake, and invites all citizens to remember the past firefighters who have died while serving our community or dedicated their lives to protecting the safety of us all. Dated 9th day of May 2019, again signed by Mayor Bennett. Obviously, this day was last week. We didn't realize that the day was this date until after last council meeting. So that's why we're recognizing it now. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, my voice would not have lasted. It's time for public comment. Any member of the public may address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. I do have some cards here, and we cannot. This has to be non-agenda items, and we cannot comment on the presentations made because of the Brown Act, whatever. So first I have Ms. Patty Duke.
Hi, my name's Patty Duke. I own property on 4950 Spruce Street. And at about the second week of January, a pickup load of ash, oil, and dirt was dumped on my road at the bottom of the downslope. And it created a big lake, and I shoveled it in between storms, and I wondered why there was a little patch a little bit further up the road. And then I found out why. Once everything had dried, that little patch was wet. So I called the city and reported it, Highlands Water. And I also met a Sacramento supervisor of the water district in Sacramento, and he said to get a schematic, which is a blueprint record of who has accessed that, because seeing that it was dumped over there and now it's wet, that's vandalism. I have been harassed since 2008 because I stick up for my property, and I stick up for 4960 Frank Wong. He's a World War II vet. He's 95 now. His easement road has been desecrated, and so this has been ongoing harassment. So I took a picture when the crew came out I also left a message for Jeff Davis and haven't got a return message. I came to planning, they said it's up to the water company. I went to Highlands Water Company and they said it's up to Jeff Davis, and I called, I think, twice. And I know that I took a picture, it's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet down, so you have to know where that water line is. And it looks like burr holes, and I did hear drill a while back down in the lot area. There's no buildings down there. And so now this is not just a personal harassment or Frank Wong's property harassment. This is the main water line that supplies Larry Rice's house, my house, and the mobile at the end. That was damaged. And so I would like a copy of who has accessed the schematic, the blueprint of where the water line runs, because that is where the gunk, the muck, also had been dropped, which was way far away from where it was dropped around creating the big lake, as I was shoveling for about 2 months in between storms to get the big lake gone. So it's not just me now. And it's not just Larry Rice. It also covered his rocks that he'd laid. He'd laid yellow rocks. So the gunk was on his rocks, on the other side, both sides, and it was around the curb. I had heard the spinning of the wheel, and then I was sitting out on my deck. It was about the second week on Friday. I didn't see the gunk, and I think until Sunday, and I've been shoveling it into you can see it. Oh yeah, there's weeds, but anyway, the harassment continues, and I would like the schematic blueprint. There's got to be a record of who's accessed it over the last year, because this happened, and I know it was going on before January.
Thank you very much. We have another request card from a Richard, is it Joner? Thank you. Mr. Joner.
Hi, council members. I'm a resident of Clearlake, been a resident for 6 years. Lived in Lake County 22 years. And I volunteer as an advocate for one of the people here in the city that has a mental health issue. Anyway, the reason I come to you today is that on November the 6th, 2018, she was staying at a friend's house that had a family emergency, asked her to get off the couch and would have to go out and fend for herself. She went to your baseball park after hours and was sleeping on the grass. Actually, the citation says, subject sleeping on grass at the baseball park avenue with Clearlake. So that wasn't such a big issue because it's actually not even a misdemeanor. It's one of your rules, a bylaw, and it's an infraction. So to take care of that, she'd given me the ticket. Here's the ticket. I had called to see how it was to be taken care of, and it said that it had to be a court appearance on December the 3rd. So December the 3rd, I have her outside the courthouse wanting to go in with her, and she runs away. She's pretty freaked out. And the reason she was freaked out was that in September the 17th, she'd gone up to Lakeport and was wandering around 4 in the morning. She's paranoid schizophrenic. 4 in the morning for her is normal, I guess. I don't know. But she was picked up by an officer who suggested that she was under the influence of drugs and insisted on that, and then went to, after a 10-minute conversation of, no, I'm not, arrested her, or went to arrest her. When she struggled, this is what happened. And that was on the Thursday. I was informed that she was incarcerated. I went on the Monday to the hearing in Lakeport, and they released her because her urine and blood was free of drugs. So she was held for 4 or 5 days. She was released. Everything was dropped. But, you know, with that kind of trauma, I could understand why she didn't want to go to the court hearing. So on December the 3rd, when she didn't appear, and there was an Honorable Douglas Thiel was the judge presiding, there was no postponement because she didn't appear. 12/3, December the 3rd, $485 was the fee. That's the fine. for sleeping because she didn't appear, but from an infraction. Now, this lady is on disability, she's mentally ill, and I just think that it's now $520 apparently and climbing. I just think that, you know, when something falls through the cracks, you guys need to know exactly what the consequences are. And she is homeless. I mean, there's a picture of a dog shed in Lower Lake. That's where she's actually living right now. She's living beside a wood shed in a dog thing, sleeping on the ground. That's where she lives. So when somebody's sick and ill, she's part of our community. I just think that it's, you know, not quite right. Something's not right. Thank you. Can I leave this with you? I'll leave it with the city attorney.
Are there any others wish to make public comment, even though a request card not sent in?
Mr. Mayor? Sir? Can you grab him? I just want to make a general comment that if you believe that there's, and this is to anybody, this is a department policy and a state law, if you believe that there's some sort of police misconduct.
No, I don't. I think that the policeman did his job. He was told
Okay, understood.
the right thing. No, the judge did his job, the policeman did his job. I had called with the...
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that the forum to make a complaint would be at that department.
No.
So,
This
okay.
isn't a complaint about that. This is just saying that
Thank you.
$495 seems excessive. Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck with it. Okay, we will close public comment. Go to the consent agenda. Any changes to the consent agenda? I'll take a motion.
Second?
A motion in a couple of seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed. Which would bring us to item 10. Continued public hearing regarding the first reading of amendments to Section 5 and 18 of the Clearlake Municipal Code related to cannabis business. Mr. Flora.
City Attorney Jones is going to give the introduction.
Sure. I just want to remind the council sort of where we left off from last meeting and advise the council what changes have been made. So this is with regard to mainly it's the micro business aspect of the ordinance, and the direction from the first reading was to come back with a limitation on the cultivation aspect of the micro business to only allow what we're calling I think it's a type 4, type 6 cultivation, which is the nursery. That way, the mature plants would not be allowed to be grown at the dispensary or other micro-business site. But other than that, the ordinance remains the same of what was drafted and what was presented to the council a couple of weeks ago. So it is now back for second reading and adoption if that is the council's desire, and staff is happy to answer questions should you have any.
If I could just add one thing, Mayor Bennett. So I did have a conversation with Vice Mayor Kramer this week in talking through this, and I just wanted to point out that his questions surrounded the ability to do manufacturing as part of a micro-business process, and so I just wanted to provide the information that with a micro-business license, those businesses are only allowed to do use non-volatile solvents as part of any extraction process. So there's two different types of that. There's, I think, a type 6 and a type 7. Type 7 is the volatile type. Type 6 is non-volatile. And so I just wanted to clarify that under existing state law, the volatile processes would not be allowed.
Thank you. Any comment from council? I think we will need a motion. Oh, public? I thought we opened it up to public. Public comment?
Hello, Council. Tasha Sokolowski from D&M Compassion Center. We've provided you all with an informative packet to look at your convenience, to kind of give you some insight of what's happening in the cannabis industry. I'll dive right in and ask you all the question from a consumer's point of view as to whether or not you like to buy local, or if you prefer to choose to support other economies and outside of the state or outside of the country. That's a question that we're always asking ourselves, and is something we are applying to our microbusiness model if we are able to move forward with it. I wanted to read off a couple quotes that I highlighted and provided you all. So, by creating an appellation of origin, rural producers can participate in the marketplace with a product that is not generic and capture economic value for traditional practices, quality standards, and geographical boundaries. That comes from Appalachian Destination article. The Humboldt County Agricultural Commissioner has implemented a state-of-the-art seal that bears the county logo, anti-counterfeit ink, and a QR code for consumers to guarantee the authenticity of all cannabis products from the region. That's also from Appalachian Destination article, and I highly recommend that Lake County, if not Clearlake first, gets on board with something like that. Cannabis is now the second most valuable crop in the United States after corn. That is a fact. That is not made up. That's from Pot and Pan's article. Today, the U.S. government and citizens at large embrace a more informed perspective on cannabis, and the country finally appears to be at a tipping point, with a majority of Americans favoring federal legalization. That comes from Cannabis Takes the Capitol by Storm article. And then finally, politicians opposed to cannabis reform no longer can point to some of the tired, debunked arguments they've used in the past to defend prohibition, as states with legal industries have experienced very few negative consequences of legalization. That's also from the Cannabis Takes Capitol by Storm article. Just wanted to extend gratitude to you all for your time and attention, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason Jones. I'm the owner of D&M Compassion Center. I've been asking for this for about 18 months now. We've been patiently waiting. I'm really thankful that we're finally at this stage that we're at now with hopefully approving the micro-business model. Also in the packet that Natasha was talking about, I highlighted 3 major benefactors of you guys actually moving forward with allowing the micro-business to take place. The first would be the citizens of our community. Currently, what's happening is there's limited source and exuberant prices being placed on cannabis. The reason being is we're now competing with San Francisco and Sacramento, and their demographic for their citizens is much different than ours, and we're being stuck to compete with those other areas. By providing the business or giving us the micro-business model, we would be able to actually package and offer a product that is more suitable for our demographic, our community. Won't go into too much detail on that, but the other benefactors, one of the other major benefactors would be the city, and instantly that would be the increase of tax revenue with allowing us, the dispensaries, to deal with the farmers directly. That money would be coming through our channels here in the city rather than us dealing with the distributor or a broker in Santa Rosa or Ukiah, and that tax revenue going to their cities. Again, you guys have the handout, so I'm only bouncing around to a few of them. The other real big benefit to the business would be, again, strengthening these other dispensaries, myself included, so that we can continue to do donations such as like the canned food drives or the back to school drives. They're sponsoring the Chamber of Commerce for the local fishing tournaments. These are all things that we're able to do because of the strength that we have, which you guys have provided us with. Again, I'm up here thanking you guys for your time and your consideration on amending this ordinance so that we can use the micro-business model. This is what the state actually put it together for, is for these rural counties or rural cities that aren't Sacramento or San Francisco or Los Angeles, to where they're moving through a lot of product. And what's happening as well to the business is our orders aren't as high as these other locations, so all the products are going to these other locations, which again are disservicing our citizens because they don't want to come out this far to this rural area. So again, the micro business model would allow us to deal with the farmers and the manufacturers directly so that our citizens can also get what they deserve. So again, I appreciate you guys' time and your consideration in the matter.
Any other comment?
Hey there, Erin McCarrick at Clearlake. Just to clarify, I think it's great to have the micro business and enable, as you're saying, like to enable people in more rural areas to have more control over their business destiny. I did just want to clarify, as we're dealing out in Auckland with some fire prevention issues, which needs to happen, and we need to have the fire suppression things. But it's my understanding, and I just want to make sure that the city council clarifies either in the wording or in the planning so that people know that they have to get the highest. My understanding is that if you have a micro business, you have to get the highest clearance from the fire department. So just to try to avoid any of the confusion that we encountered, that I don't know if that topic has come up at all. Or if you want me to clarify the question.
Well, we don't have representatives from the fire district here, but I did meet with them prior to our last meeting, and their main concern was that that standard would have to be met if there was, you know, the volatile level of manufacturing taking place. And so I don't believe that same level will be required because it's not allowed as part of the micro business anyway. Manufacturing is allowed, but not what's classified as volatile. So,
just to totally make sure that everybody is set to go before they embark on a micro business license. The way I understood it from the fire chief was that it would be any sort of micro business would need the highest level of clearance. So just
if the council does approve this ordinance, any of the eligible businesses would have to go through the use permit process, and so, I would certainly recommend that if the council does approve this ordinance, that any potential applicants clarify that as soon as possible.
And I support the ordinance. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they're going to be in for in terms of financial forecast and things like that. So thank you guys again.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see you.
I'd have something to
You're
say.
invisible.
Should have known I'd have something to say. Dave Hughes, local Clear Lake resident. I'm still trying to get my mind around the micro business and what they can do and what that, okay, my first understanding is it has to be a dispensary. So only the dispensaries can become micro businesses. Is that correct? That's the way I read it.
Well, that's one of the possible ways to meet the requirement of 3 different businesses, but what we're recommending, and it would be somewhat unique to the city of Clear Lake, is that only the 3 existing retail dispensaries would be eligible to be
Okay,
micro.
so yeah, basically that's, okay, so I'm reading that right. And then I'm still trying to get a grip around exactly what, they have to have at least 3 licenses if they do it. So they have the dispensary plus 3 more, and they can't have more than 4 more, if I read that correctly.
Yeah, we have the wrong thing here, but there's a few different ones now. So cultivation is one way of doing it. Now, what the council discussed and, this new wording would only allow cultivation of immature plants.
Right, so no cultivation,
Nursery, so
that's on
mature
the east
plants
side of the
wouldn't be allowed,
highway.
but they could still use that as one of them. So retail dispensary is one, cultivation can be another, manufacturing could be one.
Which would include making, what, candies or?
As I understand,
edibles?
maybe someone wants to clarify that it could be
Edibles.
doing pre-rolls and that type of stuff, and then non-volatile extraction. And then the other one is distribution.
Okay, and that's where they bring in they distribute, as an example, Mr. Jennings would distribute his plants he's grown to his dispensary. So he'd be a
Well,
distributor, is that?
I would prefer that Mr. Jones or someone address
Okay.
that,
But I mean,
because
that's
I
way
don't
out.
know the industry that well, but
Yeah, right now they have to pay.
they have to buy it from a
Right.
licensed distributor
So if they can buy it
now.
from themselves, they're making
Right.
more money, which is good. I mean, I don't have a problem with making more money.
That's my understanding, yes.
And then, this refers to an 18-12.20, and I copied the staff report, but I can't find 18-12.20, which includes defining the microbusiness and determines locations where they may be permitted. And I couldn't find 18-12.20. So what are the locations? Is it wherever there's a CB zone, is that? By the way, that's page 31 of, what is it, the 5?
I don't believe there's been any changes to locations at this point. So right now, the only locations where microbusiness could be is where the current
Dispensaries are?
dispensaries are. So there's.
Which would again have to be in the CB zone, though.
I think that's right.
Yeah, okay. And I know we're not messing with Lakeshore stuff right now.
That's not on the table.
Yeah, okay. And then they allow consumption on site, whether you're a microbusiness or a dispensary. I saw with a microbusiness, these businesses can also provide for consumption of cannabis on the site.
I believe that's an allowance of retail dispensaries.
Okay. Well, that's under the microbusiness.
I think it's allowed as a retail dispensary anyways.
Oh, okay.
Whether they're microbusiness or not.
All right. And I guess the other thing I'm trying to figure out is how much bigger a facility does one need if I'm a dispensary and I want to manufacture and maybe do a nursery? I don't know. I don't think there's a limit on the number of plants in a nursery. It's just
No, cultivation is limited to less than 10,000 square feet, but.
Right, yeah. Well, okay, and I guess it goes back to, if we're going to allow it, I mean, it's in the state. If we're going to allow it, they might as well be able to be profitable. It's kind of where. So that always comes back into my play. Where do you allow it? And if they can manufacture and do a nursery to grow immature plants to sell to people that are going to grow it, I guess how much more involved is it in that location? And it seems to me it would have to be a little bit bigger, but I might be wrong. I think you do some nursery now too, don't you? Can you answer any of that, or?
Yeah, I'll answer all of you.
Sure, okay. That'd be good. So I think that's about all I can think of at this point. Again, my concern seems to always come back to where, so my main concern.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll see how good my memory is, and I'll try to walk through each one of those concerns or issues or things he would like to have addressed. The first one with the micro business, under the dispensary ordinance, we're already allowed to do almost everything that the micro business already offers. The only thing in addition would be allowing us to be involved in distribution. So that would be the only real change. We are allowed to consume on site under the dispensary ordinance, so that wouldn't change under the micro business. As far as the location and expansion and everything, we wouldn't need to expand any. As far as the distribution, you have to have a designated area with an office, which we already have. As far as the nursery, rather than cultivating, because we are able to cultivate already under the dispensary ordinance, the nursery would just take up the same amount of area. Like the city manager was saying, it's under 10,000 square feet, so these are already rules that are already implied.
You talk into the microphone, please, because this is recorded on TV.
Okay,
so.
sorry. As well, as far as the moving, we're not allowed to move and switch locations. As as far as the dispensary ordinance allows, so we are stuck in our locations that we're currently in, so we won't be able to go move or build up. I believe the building or making an addition to your building isn't allowed as well. That's part of the ordinance too. So Dave, I believe, I think those were the three concerns that you had there.
I think that goes, thank you.
And then again, so the main thing by allowing or adopting the micro business model would be adding distribution. And, excuse me, the other issue was the manufacturing. Yes, that is for pre-rolls and topical creams and ointments. It is the non-volatile, so it's not making waxes or shatters. And that's when you would have to go to the sheriff or the chief of the fire department and get their approval, which we're not able to do that, so it's not even an issue.
I've got a question. With regard to the nursery, who would you be selling to? Would you be selling to private growers or to commercial growers?
We would have the option to do both. Through the distribution company, we can supply the actual licensed facilities. If they aren't licensed, then the most we'd be able to sell them is the 6 plants as a private citizen.
That was where I was getting to. And do they need to have a permit from, if they're going to be planting these in the city, do they need to
They
show
need to
you
have,
the?
exactly. And currently at our dispensary, we actually have the application form. So when people come in that want clones or seeds, we give them that form as well so that they can register with the city right away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got time for one more comment?
Sure. Always make time for you, Lord.
Thank you. I hadn't planned on coming here tonight except for to do the prayer part. But it sounds like the marijuana industry is looking to expand. 3 businesses now are promising you more money from tax revenue. I haven't heard one issue on what they're going to do with the people under the age of 21. Marijuana consumption in our high schools and our populations with our youth is one of the most dramatic things that we are facing. Do not be lured by the dollar sign that these people are telling you that you're going to make. 3 businesses are not going to change the face of Clearlake. You are. The people in this community deserve better than a drug being sold on every corner of this city. Please stop it. Thank you.
Can I speak? I'm a registered nurse, and I've worked in the hospitals for 38 years, acute care. And I've taken care of a lot of patients that have the ramifications of tobacco and alcohol. And I see that this is no different than a brewery, Kelsey Creek Brewery, a vineyard, and their tasting rooms. And they sell you the wine, they sell you the beer and whatnot. There should be an age limit, but I say it's about time marijuana was taken away from the woo that went on in the 50s, 60s, and 70s as the gateway drug. Yes, it should be regulated as far as age goes, but how many kids are drinking?
Okay, I'll keep this really short and simple, but had it not been for cannabis in my youth, because I was surrounded by alcoholism, I don't know if I'd be here today, cut and dry. I had an art teacher who recommended it to me when I was 12 years old. He didn't give it to me, but he said, you know what, I think you could benefit from that. Explore that, get in touch with yourself, find church within yourself, don't find it elsewhere, and move forward in your life. And I'm still here, 34. So I do not touch alcohol. People tell me I look 21 all the time, and cannabis is my medicine, so that's all.
Chuck Leonard, City of Clear Lake. The idea that you're just looking at dollar signs to me is utter ridiculous. I've watched most of you for quite a while, and I don't believe that's the big motivating thing. The people of California decided on this. And, you know, whether people like it or not, it's like it's been said by the last couple of people, alcohol is much worse. And I think what you're doing is the correct thing. You're just regulating and you're working at it to try to get it, as we can see by the young man that's here that's cooperating, getting up here and talking and explaining it to us. Thank you.
Thanks again, and as it's been said, this is, has been voted on by the people. And also within Prop 64, there's been a provision for $9.6 million to be allocated for grant funding. And sir, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. I'm working with some local nonprofits to create funding for, to apply for a grant, you know, if we get it, to create funding for those under 18, not necessarily for the usage, but also as a career track. Let's be real, I mean, like wherever cannabis is grown illicitly or illegally, a lot of people see it as a career track. You're not allowed to work in the industry unless you're 21. So I think it's important to educate the youth on ways to be productive members of society. So definitely heard, and if you want to talk afterwards, I'd be happy to. So thank you. There are some things to make sure that this is a safe, healthy, vibrant economy and community.
Any further public comment? Joyce?
Well, I definitely understand the concerns of the youth. I had the same concerns. They are required by our laws, of our city laws and state, to have security cameras, and I believe no one can enter unless they have a parent under the age of 21. Is that correct? Or not at all? Not at all. Okay, so I knew there was some kind of thing there that changed. So nobody under the age of 21 is even supposed to be allowed into the premises. Unfortunately, we all know that the kids are going to get this stuff if they want it, no matter what. We got cigarettes when we were kids, drinking, you know, it's going to happen. But I think because it is legal, I think we've done a good job here in the city of trying to make sure that children cannot just walk into these places. I think the state has. I think the regulations are there. We made a provision that we can only have so many according to our population. I really wanted that for the reason so we didn't expand and have a bunch of them just taking over our town. You know, so that's why that was put in place, so that we can't have more than what our population can actually hold, that we feel is appropriate. So I really feel that the city's doing the best we can with the situation. It was voted in by the people. I totally agree. I don't want my kids in there. I don't want any young youth in there. But, you know, it does come to some responsibilities of parents, also hopefully teachers, and you, Lauren, as an advocate for the youth. I know that you talk about it and try to prevent them from using anything. So, and I do appreciate that. And I hope that we just continue those kind of educations in our school district. That's what we can do for our kids, just like our parents did with us with alcohol and smoking. We have to do that now for these kids that are growing up in the marijuana world. It is what it is, and our parents had to deal with it, and now we get to deal with it as just a different product.
Well, this subject always brings out the emotion, but I would say that my focus, I won't speak for the rest of the council. I'm assuming that everybody on this council has a very similar focus that I do, but my focus is actually to address the issue you're speaking about, because I work very closely with youth, and I have for many years, and I do to this day. And the marijuana that you find in the hands of the children does not come from the dispensaries. I can tell you that right now. I talk to them all the time. It comes from their parents' backyards, and that's what I'm trying to prevent here. My objective here is to take this out of the black market and put it into the real world and turn it into a product that's regulated, taxed, and is beneficial in some way. It's not going away. It's going to be here regardless. It's going to be here regardless, but I don't want it all over the city in everybody's backyard where their children can walk out there and break off a knuckle and go to school and sell it on the way. That's what I'm not wanting to have happen. So regulation is what the main component for me is to incorporate. So this is what this does, where it puts it into a real world market where it can be regulated and policed. And it can't be if it's in everybody's backyard. So we turn it into a product that's viable and readily available for the average person to go and buy. They no longer have a reason or a need to continue to mass produce it in their own yards. So that's been my focus from the beginning on this. And yeah, I care very deeply about the success of our children, and that's why I'm making the decisions that I'm making here.
Yes, I think we all have fairly similar thoughts on this. Mr. Leonard, you stated it very well. I think we're doing our best to try to regulate an industry that's here. It's legal. The state has legalized it. Whether we individually use the product or not, or condone its use or not, is not the point here. Our purpose is to craft ordinances and regulations in our city to protect our citizens and also protect the rights of folks that are doing it correctly. So I think this regulation with regard to this particular item, I am in agreement with it and will support it. So, thank you.
I concur with both of you guys. As you know, I came from a country that regulated that, I don't know, 40 years ago. And I always predicted that this is not going to be a financial bonanza for the city. It will be some increase, and hopefully we'll be able to regulate it properly like we did through the planning commission process and now the city council. So I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready for a motion, if you're ready to receive it.
Ready for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to determine the project is exempt from environmental review in accordance with CEQA, and then hold the first reading ordinance number 229-2019, amending sections 5 and 18 of the municipal code, read by title only, waive further reading, and set second reading and adoption for May 23rd, 2018. Should we read the full title? Read the full title. In accordance with the City Council, the City of Clearlake, amending certain provisions of Article 18-3 of the Clearlake Municipal Code, amending sections 18-6.01 of the Clearlake Municipal Code to add a definition for cannabis micro businesses, repealing and readopting 18-12 of the Clearlake Municipal Code entitled Commercial Cannabis Uses, repealing and readopting sections 5-25 titled Cannabis Business Regulatory Permit of Chapter 5, and making and finding of exemption from CEQA under sections 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines.
Second that.
Do we need a roll call? We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. I want to thank staff for their work on this. I know this has been an ongoing, long drawn-out process, and that's what makes it right. It seemed like a good ordinance, and well thought out. Staff did a good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Take us on to agenda item number 11, consideration of lease with Dell Financial Services for computer workstation for the police department. Directly to
Turn it over to Chief White.
Good evening again, council members and members of the public. The police department has a number of different computer workstations across all of our divisions that are due for a refresh. This is especially important because all of them run Windows 7, which reaches the end of life, January of 2020. Historically, the police department has purchased computers outright, which creates a large capital expense on a periodic basis. We are moving towards leasing agreements where it makes sense. This creates predictable expenses across the years and ensures that we have the latest in technology and that we're up to date without trying to scrounge for money every couple of years. In this proposal, we have contacted Computer Logistics, which provides support for our computer network. They have clearances through DOJ to work with us on our computers in the police department. They've provided us with a budgetary quote for replacing all the workstations and monitors. And Dell Financial Services can provide a tax-exempt lease structure to enable us to do this. What we're asking for is that you authorize the city manager to enter into a 3-year tax-exempt lease agreement with Dell Financial Services for the project, which would be a term of 36 months and wouldn't exceed an amount of 12,500 years for up to 24 workstations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any public comment on this? Bring it back to council.
I don't have any.
No comment. I think it's something overdue, and it's a natural progression to what needs to be brought us up to date.
Okay, go ahead. I move that we adopt resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease with Dell Financial Services for computer replacements.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. No, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed. Good job. So, agenda item number 12, discussion regarding replacement and/or purchase of public works equipment.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so this item tonight, I'll give a brief introduction and turn over to our Public Works Superintendent, but the council's been very supportive of investing in equipment for our Public Works crew, and they're definitely appreciative of that. We don't have any what we feel are immediate needs for equipment, but we do want to plan ahead and not be stuck in a situation where we're scrambling at the last minute. And so we wanted to have a discussion today about some upcoming challenges that are going to impact our need for purchasing equipment. So with that, I'll turn over to Mr. Baker, and then we've put together a brief summary of some of the quotes for different pieces of equipment just for your review tonight.
Thank you. Some of the pieces of equipment that the city manager is talking about is our 10-yard dump truck and our water truck. The 10-yard dump truck is a 2000, and it is a 10-speed. The water truck is a 3,500 gallon, and it's a 1997. And according to the CARB compliance for the state of California, anything from 2000 and older will not be able to be registered in the year 2020. And that's why I'm glad that Ellen and I, the city manager and I, have had this discussion. Again, it's nothing urgent at this time, but we also don't want to be put in a corner. So what direction we're looking for is we have gotten some quotes to purchase new equipment, and also I've talked to a gentleman that's also dealt with the city before, and he's actually refurbished some of the equipment that we have, and we got a quote from him. And so what we're asking the council is, would you like us to continue to get quotes for new equipment, to have the equipment refurbished, or both?
Maybe we could just walk through some of the statistics a little bit. You can see there, Mr. Baker was able to get 2 quotes for from Kenworth and International for both water truck and dump truck, and so that would be everything completely brand new. And we haven't been able to get responses. Sometimes it's difficult on these, and we've always been trying for several weeks. We like to get some more quotes, but then what he mentioned there, the bottom line on each of those would be to take our existing chassis and dump body and existing chassis and water tank and basically put a new engine in it and do some upgrades to it. You can see that the cost of that is, not enormously less than purchasing a new one. So, I don't know if it makes sense, and those would be for 2015 or newer engine. So, last summer we had a lot of issues with both of them. They were both down for a period of time, and we had to rent to keep our grading crews going. At this time, we feel like they're in good shape and there's not any immediate issues, so we may be able to just go ahead and wait until the end of this grading season and purchase something this fall and winter to get us ready for next year. So that would be one approach, and probably what we would recommend, but we just kind of wanted to get some feedback from the council on this. And then aside from that, there had been discussion before about possibly purchasing an excavator and that was actually brought to the council along with our grader purchase, and then we had some direction to hold off on that at the time. But we do have numbers there on that. We would be required to purchase a trailer to be able to move that around. So you can see the cost of that as well. And I guess at this time, what I'm hearing from the crew is that we don't have an immediate need for that, especially with the new backhoe that was purchased this past year. But there are maybe some other things as we move forward that we may think about sort of adding to our inventory, street sweeper being one of them, and we just got some preliminary quotes on that. But I think it would be helpful for Mr. Baker to share some of the issues that the crews had in preparing for some of our road projects. So as I'm sure you probably know, as part of our franchise agreement with Clearlake Waste Solutions, they've agreed to provide some street sweeping on certain city streets. They do that basically one day a month is what they're doing. But there have been some situations where it may be helpful for us to have some additional equipment to address issues that come up. So Mr. Baker, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Some of the issues with the street sweeping, the crew's gone out and literally spent 2 to 3 days just cleaning dirt and cleaning the road that is paved just so they could access it to do potholes. And if we had a street sweeper that went through and like every week monitored and took care of those streets and did maintenance on it, it'd make the maintenance a lot easier and also take care of some of the new roads and work that's being done, Phillips and 18th. The engineer and I drove down Phillips today, and you can't even see the bike trail, the bike path. It's completely covered in rock and dirt and sand, and if a street sweeper went by and maintained that and took care of it, it would help the road condition and maintenance a lot. The excavator would be a nice piece of equipment to have, but I can't sit there and say that we have to have it right now. No, I can't. I wouldn't say that to you guys. Alan's asked me if we need it right now, and again, it'd be a nice piece of equipment to have, but there's other things that I feel that we could use before that. And those items would be the 10-yard dump truck and the water truck need to get replaced before we would get an excavator. We just, if we have the excavator and we don't have a 10-yard truck to pull it, what good would an excavator be?
So anyway, we just want to give you some information, any feedback that the council has on the situation and direction that they'd like to give us as we kind of do some planning. I mean, we do have some remaining funding in the budget that we could, make a purchase this year, but and we've kind of worked that into our long-term or 5-year Measure V plan that the council went through a couple of months ago for, some additional equipment purchase over the next few years from time to time. But, I would also add that our sales tax projections are not increasing at the level that was initially predicted. We're looking at Measure V revenue right in the $2 million range into the foreseeable future, which was a little less than the last projection we had. And so, I think there's still room in that to do a lot of projects, to maintain staff, and to make sure we have the equipment necessary. But there is the need to sharpen our pencil a little bit more to make sure all those needs are met.
So I've got a series of questions here. I see that the dump truck quotes that came back only had a range of $6,000. However, the water truck was an $82,000 difference from a Kenworth to an International. Is there any particular reason why the Kenworth is so much more expensive on the water truck?
The International one also has pretty much a bunch of stuff that the Kenworth already comes standard with, And that price isn't included in that 168,000.
Okay, so there's a disparity there as far as that price is concerned.
Yes.
Okay, I was just looking at that. That's a shockingly different
Nope.
number.
I
you know.
agree, and
Okay.
I asked the gentleman on it myself, and I said, well, why wouldn't you give me a quote for the water truck with
And you-
everything I need on it?
And you, the public, aren't seeing this, but the difference between an international water truck and a Kenworth water truck is 168,000 to 250,000. So it's kind of a really huge disparity there. So, so regarding the excavator, I know that it can be rented monthly. It says yearly on our sheet here, but it can be rented monthly. Now, if you had projects coming up that would require that, and we were talking about attaching the bush hog deal to an excavator, that sort of thing as well. But if you had projects coming up that was specifically denoted for the use of the excavator, we could plan that ahead, and it only comes out to just under $5,000 a month, and if that's the case. So for now, we could use it on a month-by-month basis and save quite a bit. If you look at the total cost of an excavator, and we did it a couple months out of the year, for example, from when we really need it, I mean, we would, over the entire lifespan of Measure V, we would only spend a fraction of what we would spend buying an excavator. So I don't know. That would be coming down to you and what you feel like we need. But I would say that that would be a much better use of funds if that's the possibility.
I agree, and right now, with us grading, there wouldn't be a whole lot of use for an
So
excavator.
it'd just be sitting.
It'd just
Okay.
pretty much be
So
sitting.
I would like to clarify for you,
Sure.
though, this isn't like proposing to rent it per year, it's just Caterpillar has a
At least
governmental
a lease
and
program,
so
but
that's
I-
just showing you
I
what
do
the-
think it actually comes out fairly similar. If I remember seeing the numbers we had seen last year, it was it ended up being around $5,000 a month, and we rented it, and if memory serves, it ended up sitting. So we rented a device, and then it sat. So we would want to plan ahead, obviously, and use the device whenever we rented it. So that would be huge for me, is just to make sure that we're spending our money as wisely as possible. If we rented it for X period of time, we have those projects planned in the X period of time. I just think that seems reasonable. Now, the street sweeper situation, I'm just going to throw this out there as an idea, but I don't know. I do know that street sweepers are available in electric models, and I think that that would prevent any CARB compliance issues in the future. We may also have grants that are available for a electric-powered street sweeper, so we may not have to spend any money on buying one, or very little, if we were to able to achieve a grant for an electric version. Just as an idea.
That's why we're asking for direction. Thank you, sir.
No problem. So, but I mean, obviously, I'm very supportive of us making sure we're maintaining our CARB compliance. I think we're right now required for Tier 4, right? And then
Yes,
as
Tier
of
4.
2022, is it? We're going to be
2023.
2023, yeah. So then we go to, is it Tier 5?
Right now, it's still Tier 4.
Right, but who knows what kind of thing they're going to throw at us, right? Thank you so much for their work on this.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. Just looking from to replace the engine. I think that's, a life that you get out of it. And once you start messing around with this stuff, I would definitely go for new. The other part, for the street sweeper, can we adjust or renegotiate our contract with Clearlake Waste to have them do it more frequently?
Yes, potentially, and in fact, we have talked to them about that, and they've agreed to increase some of the sweeping as an offset for. They've used the old sort of part of the public works yard that's fenced there at the top of 53 and 18th right there. For some of their roll-offs, and they like to have some space here. And so the plan was to provide them some space at the new public works yard. And so in lieu of them paying us a rental amount, we had asked them if they would expand the street sweeping program within the city. And so, that would be really helpful. The issue that I wasn't aware of until Mike brought it up was, the guys spending 3 days sweeping a street so that they can do pothole patching. Some of that may be alleviated by increasing that program, but I'm not sure that it would be enough to really eliminate that type of extra work. We need our guys to have the grader blade in the ground and putting asphalt on the streets, not sweeping the dirt off of it. So, it was a new thing for me, and I felt like we should bring it forward and get some feedback from you on it.
Thank you, Mr. Becker and Mr. Flora, for these numbers. I have a first question, follow-up to Councilmember Harris's question on the difference between the cost of the Kenworth and the International and the water truck. You said that the International was a basic truck and the Kenworth was fully loaded?
Yes.
What things on that fully loaded Kenworth do we need there? Could we do without would the International do the job?
Well, the International actually didn't have some of the stuff. It didn't have like a water pump for the side discharge. All that stuff is extra that you needed to buy.
So when you bought all that stuff, then what would the cost estimate be?
I have an actual breakdown of that information.
What's the bottom line of it?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. So it's not apples and apples when you're looking at those two. And getting to the rebuild of the existing chassis, dump bodies, and water tank on the tender. What condition? What condition are those chassis and the tank and the dump bed in? Are they in good shape?
They're in good shape. The water tank is in good shape. Our chassis is in good shape.
And what would that rebuild include? Would it be just limited to the engine, or would it include running gear, for instance?
A complete rebuild, running gear, springs, struts.
You'd come up with essentially a new unit.
Yes, it'll be just our chassis and our dump bed on the 10-yard truck.
All right. Then the next, and here's a good question, is timeline. You say we don't need it to do it this summer. Will there be enough time, and will this gentleman, whoever he is, schedule that work to fall in our downtime for those two units?
Yes, I talked to him about that and told him that we would like to keep the equipment for our grading season and bring him the equipment toward the end of the year, in the winter. And he said he would need our equipment 8 to 12 weeks. He said he'll probably get it done sooner, but he doesn't want to say that because then we're going to hold him to it, but 8 to 12 weeks.
Okay. And as I understand, we have a smaller dump truck that we could use in emergencies during
Yes,
that downtime.
we have a 5-yard dump truck.
Right. And as far as a water truck during that time, probably not a need for it.
Don't really need it.
Then let's get down to the other equipment, and the excavator, this, as I understand it, we bought the grader on this lease option basis, and I think that's the basis you were projecting this $58,000 a year payment.
Yeah, that also includes the masticator that we had talked about. as
Okay,
part of
it's
that.
fully loaded, and it includes, and at the end of this period, we could buy the excavator for
I think it's like $101 or something.
all right, so basically, basically is financing it for however many years to add up to that. The trailer, is that a new price on that at $35,000?
Yes.
Are they available slightly used?
They do have them slightly used, yes.
Ritchie Brothers or something?
And I would have to get quotes for those for you.
All right, but it's probably a significant reduction from this price,
Yes.
if not substantial, but at least significant. All right, street sweeper at $200,000. I kind of like your thinking of it, that it would clean up those potholes and make the job. I assume it's going to save a lot of time.
Yes.
Just give me for instance, instead of taking 2 hours or per pothole with our new patch equipment, what do you think what would it reduce that time for to go from, what we do right now to get the pothole ready and then filled? What would it be? What would we be saving in time on each of those potholes? And I'm not going to hold you to the minute, by the way.
Every situation is different,
Yeah,
Mr. Kramer. And like I said, I had the guys out there on, it was Meadowbrook was one of the bad ones, where that channel comes out behind that liquor store there. And there was a lot of dirt, and they were there quite a while. And I think that if the street sweeper was able to go through there, they would pretty much be able to go up and start.
Is that an extreme case, or is that the norm?
That's actually a norm for quite a few of the roads in Clear Lake.
Right, so,
It's not just a one-time incident.
and then the next question on the street sweeper, you've got a purchase price there. Is there a lease option available for that?
We haven't really looked into it that far. I asked Mike just to get us some numbers so that you have perspective on it. So this is a new one. I think he found some used ones available for, what was it, around 160,000 or something. But I mean, that'd be something if we wanted to move forward with it, we'd definitely look and see if a lease was an option.
Yeah, I would put pothole fixing pretty much at the top of the list on this. Obviously, we've got some streets like Meadowbrook and places that we've just got to rejuvenate those completely sooner rather than later. But we've got a lot of streets that can last for a few years if the potholes get filled. And so I like the idea of it, but I'd like to see a little bit more information on that being, on a cost of that. And I'm still a fan of the excavator, by the way, with especially the navigator on it.
I am too, Mr. Kramer's just, right now, a street sweeper, I just think that a street sweeper would be.
You put that above it, I get that. But we've got, I think we've always been talking about the dump truck and the water truck. We know we had to because of the tier and air resources situation. And if we go with the rebuild, that's a significant savings over purchasing new, if we've got the time to do it. And so I'd like to see just get. I would agree with you. I like the street sweeper, but I think I'd sure like to see that excavator too. I think there's more use for it than Councilman Harris does. So that's my comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the questions is I'm assuming that you have a plan on when you're going to be doing the potholes on certain roads. I mean, you have it scheduled out. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a way that we could make a deal with the street sweepers now to say, these are the streets that we need cleaned before your project? So let's say you're going to do a project next week on this road out here, you could call them up. That's going to be scheduled. I'm assuming, I don't know how far out you are on your scheduling, but you can say, can you sweep this street before this date? Maybe that's a way to start. Anyway, I'm just saying starting, for us to start getting them swept so we're not wasting time. They sound like, we can deal with them. I think that might be just an idea. And then if that works out and it becomes something, maybe we don't need the street sweeper. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe we can just figure out something with what we already have going. And so that's one idea. Two, I think since we do have equipment, that a lot is good except for the motor we need to change. I think it's just reasonable and more self-sufficient and less cost to go ahead and have it just rebuilt. Makes sense to me, is during the time where everything's down, so it's not going to really affect us if they're going to do it during the winter. And I mean, just the cost savings is quite a bit there. And that cost savings might be able to be put back to, say, the street sweeping is a good thing and we need to, the money that we save on those two pieces of equipment would buy the street sweeper. So to me, it just makes sense to go, since it's going to be the same, basically, as a new vehicle. And I would say that's the way. That's my opinion on how I think it would be the best suited for our finances. And then just wait till winter time and let them go do it. We can prepare for that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Bill?
I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. I know this, but I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm imagining the process of this going through cleaning the street before the paving or patching. What I'm not getting clarity on in my mind is how a street sweeper is going to handle our roads. I'm imagining a moon terrain and a street sweeper going over the moon terrain, which is covered in a bunch of debris and dirt, and I'm imagining it throwing stuff around and maybe throwing a lot of stuff into the holes and maybe not accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish, but I would have to witness that to know that. I'm just imagining, based off of what I know about mechanics, I'm imagining it slinging around a bunch of stuff and filling the holes that we're about to try to. So what I'm wondering is, we have this new vac trailer. Is there an attachment for our vac trailer that will allow us to go through and do a suck out?
We've actually already been doing that.
And how effective is that?
It's a timely process.
Is
it
it?
works.
Okay.
But also with the street sweeper too, I'm also looking at the roads that the city is also paying to have fixed currently as well.
Right, as a maintenance idea. And I totally understand
Okay.
that. I'm just thinking about addressing your current issue that you brought up, which is trying to patch the streets.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if there isn't maybe even another solution for dealing with that outside of the street sweeper. Because I think the street sweeper is fantastic for streets, but I wouldn't necessarily declare some of the stuff that we're patching streets anymore. It's more like a rocky road, you know. And I'm not sure how well a street sweeper even does on that, you know. And would the brushes even hold up? I mean, I can imagine them being damaged and that sort of thing from the, situations. But
Well, it would definitely be more effective on some of our streets than others.
right. But I'm just thinking out of the box. If there's an issue with getting the roads we have currently patched, if there is potentially another device or another solution that we would need to effectively suck out the debris that's in the way. And I didn't know if maybe the vac trailer could assist in that sort of thing, or if there's another device.
No, the vac trailer's doing it. It takes that vac trailer a little bit of time too.
Right.
But
there's a lot of product on the road, right? A lot of
there is.
Right.
And we're getting it.
Well, I appreciate the efforts. I applaud the efforts. Everybody in the city, I'm sure, applauds the efforts. So we're excited about seeing the roads being renovated. But yeah, absolutely. I just was trying to think of maybe if there was something we already have in our arsenal.
Just to give you an idea, CWS sends us a report of the days and times that they did the street sweeping each month and the amount of tons of material removed. And so basically in the one day that they operated earlier this month, it was almost 6 tons of material that they removed from the roads that they...
Just sweeping it up. And is there a map as showing where all they've swept and what pattern they run?
They don't provide us a map, but I mean, that's something we could work with them on. But.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Just one quick question. Is the same kind of warranty for the rebuilt as the new? Okay.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
That would be a concern of mine.
Dirk took my question because, I've rebuilt engines in my day from old jalopies I had to Wisconsin air-cooled engines on a baler. But I would be curious as to what the warranty would be as compared to a newer Kenworth or something like that. So, I think as far as direction, it's something, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up to that, in asking, with regard to the engine part of that rebuild, is that a rebuild of that engine or a new current tier rated engine replacing it on that part of it?
It would be a current tier engine.
A new one, not the old one rebuilt?
It would be a 2015 or newer.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Can't
And we'd
rebuild
have
the
to
one
see
we
what
have,
the
so.
warranty was on that. Okay. Well, I think it's something that the council would be interested in as far as a dump truck, the water truck. I think the trailer's a must. You're going to need that. But I would bring it back to council when you get some firmer figures.
What would we need the trailer for if we don't have the excavator? We don't need the trailer.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'm kind of with Mr. Harris on the renting if we needed it at this point. And to me, it's just too expensive to pay for just sitting there a lot.
To provide some clarity, though, on the excavator trailer, that's required regardless, because if we're leasing an excavator, if it doesn't come with the trailer, then does it come with the trailer when we lease it? Okay, so we would need a trailer regardless.
No, but I'm saying we don't need it now, when he was
Right,
saying.
but
what
if we're going to
gonna
have
go-
projects, even if we're just going to be leasing an excavator, we are going to need a trailer, because we need to get it around. We can't drive it, can't road it.
So is that something you want to buy now when we don't know what we're going to need, or you want to wait to buy
I
it?
think the excavator and the trailer would be things that would
Together.
have to come
So
together.
that's
It's
something
not-
later on. We're just trying to decide what to do now.
Right. Well, wasn't that an issue, though? I remember that being brought up as an issue, that we had equipment that we could not move because we did not have a trailer to do that.
We have a trailer now.
Okay.
The trailer we have now could not.
Okay, so it's, okay.
Right.
Well, that's what I was thinking about, that it would haul other equipment, the trailer you have on here, but we already have one.
We do have a
Okay.
trailer that is able to move the current
Gotcha.
equipment that we have.
So do you have your direction as to what?
Yes, so I would say the direction is that towards the end of the construction season, we'll come back with firmer figures on both new and more details on warranty and related things on upgrading our equipment with new engine and suspension and so forth. And then we're also going to do some additional research on what street sweeper options are available and bring them back when appropriate.
That would be
And-
now.
Right. And, yeah,
We would
the
do that now as opposed to later.
street
Yeah,
sweeping.
I think that's something we would probably look at a little bit sooner, yeah.
So we're going to talk to them about maybe what I had suggested about.
We
see
can
if
do
they
that
could do-
immediately and
Yeah,
see, I'm not sure how flexible they are on their schedule, but, you know, it's definitely worth talking to them about.
Tit
so.
for tat. You know, that's what I
They're
say.
usually great to work with on stuff like this, so.
Okay, you have your direction?
I don't know if there was any public comment or not, but.
Public comment? Yes.
We have a lot of walkers. We have a lot of people with strollers, with bicycles, kids, dogs in the walkways. And the white lines are disappearing. And I'm hearing street sweeping for maintaining where we're constructing roads and stuff. What about maintaining the areas people are walking? Because we have a lot of walkers. And there's areas, and I mean, I keep saying it, or the S-curve on the way to Mendo Mill, that people are walking on both sides. And it's really scary because now the 20-mile-an-hour sign's gone on the one-way. There's no walking signs there. And I just see the traffic just zoom like it's, you know, a racetrack. And I just hate to see a kid get killed. I mean, somebody's already been seriously injured there. I guess he was found in the road. But a street sweeper, which I've seen in the city, I know, we're not a big city, but besides construction, isn't it also to help maintain the road? I mean, the walkways? That's my concern.
I think Mr. Baker can answer you.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I thought I did say that the street sweeper would be used for maintaining roads, not just for construction. I'm sorry if I didn't say that.
Well, it's not just the road.
No, it's for all roads. It would be used for all roads, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening, Bruno Sabate, City of Clearlake. I love the conversation about the street sweeper, and here's the reason why. We have a hybrid road infrastructure with dirt roads meeting into paved roads, and as the cars drive off the dirt roads, they bring a lot of that material onto our paved streets and help deteriorate our streets at a much faster pace. We just redid the lines, the restriping. A lot of that is already gone, and it's not because the striping was bad, it's because of the sandpaper-like activity with our wheels coming off of the dirt roads, going onto the pavement, and it makes it go away. So we're spending money to fix our roads and to renovate our roads, but at the same time, because of the hybrid infrastructure we have, it's deteriorating at a much faster rate. And so I think that the street sweeper, granted, maybe the street sweeper itself might deteriorate the road by continuously scraping, but I think it would save us from a lot of other issues of seeing those roads deteriorate faster than they should. So I think Mr. Baker hit the nail on the head that it's about the maintenance of the new roads that we're building for longevity and for the best bang for our buck as we're spending this money from Measure V to fix our roads. I just think that this conversation is thrilling to see that we have the potential, now that we have money, to not only rebuild our streets, but to save our streets. So I think that, to me, that's the highlight, was that comment that you made.
Chuck Leonard, City of Clear Lake. We've always had a problem with the striping of the roads because we can't use the highest quality material because of the runoff that goes into the lake because it contaminates it. So we have to use lower grade stuff. That's why it doesn't last. It's always going to be that way.
Any further comment? That's it. Go ahead.
So to me, it feels like, I mean, on the other items, I agree that it seems like we're just looking for a feedback at the end of construction season. I would say in general, I feel like we're a little more ready to move forward on the street sweeping action. So that's my feeling on this. I think that if you feel like that the street sweeper is going to be beneficial to us, and it's a component to getting the road work done that we need done, and to the idea of maintaining our roadways in a safer and more lasting manner, then yeah, I mean, I think that we should probably look at moving forward with that sooner than later. So I like the idea of tabling the other things until we have more information, but I'd like to really hammer it out. And in fact, I'd like to request a proposal brought back to us by next council meeting for a definitive price on the purchase or lease or whatever. So if we could do some, personally, I'd like to see some much quicker response on the street sweeper aspect.
So I just have a question and that's, I mean, I agree that that's a really important thing, but I think we also talk to the company and see what we can negotiate. I'd like to have that brought back. I'd like to have some options for us to discuss, so.
And I agree, and I think that it could be a co-mingling
Right, they could be
scenario.
together, yeah, they could
So
be
we have a
together.
little more frequency with them. It doesn't hurt anything to have them expending their labor to do the work.
Right.
So yeah, no, I'm in agreement, total agreement with that.
But is there any special licensing to street sweeping? Isn't there a special license for that?
Our senior maintenance workers could actually do it.
Okay, so they're licensed to do the
Yes.
street sweeping, okay. Because I know that's a special license, so.
I think we
Yeah.
pretty much have a consensus on that.
Continue on with getting more detailed pricing.
So we will do our best to have information by the next meeting. I will just hedge that it's been difficult sometimes to get timely responses on quotes, but to the extent possible, we'll bring it back at the next meeting. Outside of that, we'll do it as soon as we can.
Which brings us to agenda item number 13, amendment of contract with VSS International for the Moss Davis Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So the Moss Davis project started on Tuesday, and so we have a change order before you. In fact, as if a change order isn't bad enough, we have a revised change order that's higher than the one that's in your packet that was given to us today. And so that's being passed down, and I'm going to actually turn it over to our consulting civil engineer to discuss the change order on this project.
Good evening, mayors, members of the council. Thought I'd start off. I've got kind of three topics I'll cover on this. Finances would be the number one, contract change order details number two, and then why the change order will be number three. As far as finances are concerned, if you have the updated, I think we made copies for you tonight. The current change order request is for $46,160.94. If my calculations are correct or close, that would mean a city contribution to that of about $9,693. That's a split project. 21%, I'm looking at it now, 21% city, and the remainder is being a county obligation. So I want to keep our eye on the ball on that. That's about $9,600 to the city on that change order. The second thing I was going to go over were the change order details. What the construction inspector, Gene, had done is when he realized there was more square yardage it was going to be necessary, he negotiated with the contractor out there, and he reduced the dig-out section from 6 inches thick to 4 inches thick, which is still totally adequate. And what that did is it allowed him to basically double the square yardage, but it didn't really double the price overall. So I think that was a very good negotiation on his part, and that's one of the details I wanted to cover on the change order. The third one is why the change order. Obviously, there was a discrepancy in what the bid documents said. The bid documents had estimated 700 square yards worth of dig out, and it ended up being 1,638 square yards of dig out. When the bid documents were put together by the city chief inspector, he's a very talented person. He's been in the industry a long time and totally qualified to do that. I trust his judgment, and I've worked with him for the past year and a half. What happened and what I'm seeing kind of universally across the city is that, in fact, when we looked at Meadowbrook, for example, the streets this year degraded more in this year than they have in years past, just due to the extended time of rain and the amount and sheer volume of rain and runoff that we had. And so what is happening is that on a year like this, which was pretty extraordinary, when you have streets that are already have what's called a PCI, or pavement condition index, that's very low, and when you add a large flush of water for about 4.5 months straight on those streets, they really go down fast. So what happened here is that there probably was about 700 square yards of dig outs at the time that Gene had originally estimated this job, which was in the fall of last year. But throughout the winter, the streets, a lot of areas that were what we would be kind of marginal for a microsurface, but would still hold a microsurface, became accelerated and became degraded. So that's where the disparaging differences come from in the amount of dig outs. There's actually a lot more dig outs created over this past winter time. I know I made just a very mental observation. We're looking at a very similar situation on Harbor Lane. Wasn't as bad on Harbor Lane where we're doing construction now and Highlands Harbor Drive, because number one, it's flat and you're in a residential area. Keeping in mind that Moss Davis Road is seeing garbage trucks, and so it's really bad up there. We doing a project on Meadowbrook right now, which we're preparing to go to bid on, and noticeably my pictures when I took before we started the survey on the project and after the survey, it's like, wow, there are sections of road here that have really gone down quickly. So I just wanted to tell you that's the why of why that square yardage is accelerated. Any questions?
Do you think you have it in hand now?
I believe so. I was on site today with Gene, and he's very hands-on, and I think we have a handle on it.
So this will hopefully be at least as far as this particular part of it, you don't foresee any other change orders?
I don't really foresee any others. All that's left after this is the microsurface, and that's a pretty fixed cost, fixed area. So I can't guarantee it, but
correct me if I'm wrong, but are the dig outs done now?
Dig outs are done.
So the way this is calculated is the dig outs were done and the construction manager and the contractor verified the calculation, which is what you see before you. So there shouldn't be any additional change order for the dig outs.
This change order's already completed.
Yes, it is.
See.
We're having a gun to our head. Increase. I think that is either the plans were, I don't believe that in 9 months it deteriorated that much. The other part that I'm concerned about is instead of a 6-inch lift, a 4-inch lift. How is that adequate? Why is it adequate now when it wasn't adequate to the design?
Well, so your first question, or your first statement on the plans, there were no plans drawn. It was just bid specs. The city inspector did designed the job. So I wasn't involved. There wasn't another engineering firm involved. The city inspector did this because, and he's capable of doing it, I believe. As far as the 4 versus 6-inch. It may not be absolutely ideal, but I believe 4 inches is adequate just because the subgrade underneath that street, when I first started working for the city, before I was your city engineer, and I was contracted to do some individual projects, I did my own geotechnical analysis on several streets throughout the town. And the underlying base material of your streets is very, very hard and very, very solid. In fact, I couldn't get my auger. I have an auger with a engine on. I couldn't get my auger to even go through most of your streets. So, with that knowledge, I wouldn't have any reservations about reducing that section to 4 inches. Is 6 better? Yeah, and 8 would be even better. They're garbage trucks. What would be the best is Portland cement concrete, but we don't have that. So I don't think it's a huge sacrifice, but 6 would be better for sure.
The sections that I've seen kind of, I think there is some base failure. That's why you're taking it out, right?
The alligatoring that you're seeing on those streets is a combination of some base failure, but it's not the typical clayey soil base failure that you would see typically in the valley or lower lying areas. It's more a structural failure because the streets have been overlaid over time or chip sealed over time, and the vehicular traffic is just destroying it and breaking it apart in chunks. A lot of those sections, if it was real base failure, you would have a lot heavier duty rutting, especially on Moss Davis. If you were having real true base failure with those garbage trucks, you would see ruts that would be 4 and 5 inches deep in that street. There's some slight ones, but those slight ruts that you see is because the pavement is pushing out. It's not a real, what we call classic base failure.
And you believe that this is adequate, this 4 inches? Because that bothers me a little bit. If we originally had a design for 6 and now we're going to go 4, that's a 50% less, or that's my concern.
Well, I share your concern. I think that that's a call that Gene had made, and I think probably the reason he made the call is just for the basic economics. Do I think 4 is adequate? Yeah, I think 4 is adequate, especially given the fact that you're going to microsurface. So you're going to put a coating over that street that protects it from water. And so when we get rains next year, that water should sheet off the streets and not, flow into all the cracks and stuff. So I think 4 inches is adequate.
Has the county weighed in on, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in ahead of you. Has the county weighed in on this since they're paying the bulk of this?
Yeah, they haven't raised any issues. I did want to clarify, though, the actual cost to the city, it's 29%, not 21%. So it's just over $13,000 would be the additional cost to the city.
So, not to beat the dig out thing up so much, but I'm curious about that situation. At what point during this did we decide to go from the 6 to the 4? At what point? Was it before the awarding of the contract or after?
After.
So after the contract was awarded and the mission based off of the contract was to do 6 inches, the contractor decided to go to 4?
That was a negotiation that took place between the city inspector and the contractor. I wasn't.
So I'm just curious about the fact that we went from a 6 inches to a 4 inches, and even at reducing that substantially, 33%, it increased the overall cost. I understand that based off of what you explained with the rain, obviously we had extremely heavy rain, but I would have to back up my fellow council member Sluten's idea on that's a pretty substantial change to take place in a very short period of time, and you would think there would be substantial savings with the fact that we're doing a 33% less of the job to begin with. So it's just weird to me that we're seeing such an enormous change order, having reduced the job by 33%.
The square yardage in the bid documents was 700 square yards, and what they ended up performing in the field was 1,638 square yards. So it was just slightly over double.
And that's with the reduction, 2-inch reduction.
That's with a 2-inch reduction. Yes.
Yeah, the square yards is area you're talking about.
Yes.
Not cubic yards, which would be the depth.
Yeah, this area.
Is it unique that they would come to us after the work was already done?
Well, I mean, I would say this isn't really an issue with the contractor bidding incorrectly, I don't think. This is an issue with...
That's what I'm trying to clarify, to be honest with you.
We underestimated the amount of dig-outs that were required. Now, our city engineer is saying he believes that the bulk of that was increased over this winter because of degradation. So, regardless of how much of that is true, I think one lesson for us as a public works department is we need to spend some more time perhaps in getting some consultation on those estimates. I think, if Mr. Schwartz was here at the time, for example, when that was done, maybe some discussions. I mean, we feel like we have a very capable team with our construction manager, but and our inspector, but I think, we may have been able to spend some more time and have a more accurate calculation at the time on what the actual dig-outs would be.
Well, given the situation on this one, we're only responsible for 29%, but if we were looking at facing this, what you're saying is great information, because what you're seeing right here is a small fraction of what this would be impacting us if it was another project we weren't getting co-op funding on. So that's what concerns me, is that we'd find ourselves in a situation like this again, but maybe the situation we find ourselves again is going to impact us to the tune of the full 50 or 100,000 or whatever it is that the change order would come out to be. So thank you so much for your time.
Just to address your concern there, Councilman Harris, on the design that we did for Highlands Harbor Drive and Harbor Lane, what we did on that one that I was in charge of is we agreed during the design phase where the dig-outs were going to be. Then we went in and we marked those dig-outs, and we got verification from Public Works. At that time, it was Doug and Jean. These are the dig-outs. And then when we went through and surveyed the project topographically, we surveyed our dig-out areas and marking them out, so we knew the exact square footage and the exact locations. And those were actually put on the bid documents, on the plans that were drawn. Right. So I think what Alan's saying is in the future, that's should be the way it's done.
Yeah, I'm considerably less concerned with this particular scenario. 13,000, to be honest, is a bargain for the additional work that was accomplished. But if we're looking at projects coming up in the future, I just don't want this to be a continued issue where we find ourselves saying, well, the reason why we can charge you so much more is because of the rain. It would just get scary. So
Yeah, I would be in that seat, and I'd be a lot more scared than you, because it'd be my name on the plans, believe me.
Right. And unless we forget, a lot of that damage was caused a few years ago, and not only were there garbage trucks, but there were a lot of dump trucks concerned with cleanup of several fires. So,
One very quick question. So basically, it was Gene, the inspector, that determined the quality, the sizes of the dugouts originally to be 700 square yards?
Yes.
And that was just not on a drawing, it was just estimated by actually marking it on the ground, or?
I'd have to ask him exactly how he arrived at his estimates, but he's the one that was responsible for preparing the estimates.
This can't happen again, because it bothers me a lot.
I understand.
I think it
And
bothers
just
all
what,
of us.
just what, I mean, this is only 13,000, only 13,000. Let me say that.
Obviously, though, I mean, so I'm not justifying this, it bothers me a lot too, but, you know, the extra work to define that, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it also costs money to do a higher level of design from the beginning. And so you don't run into these situations as often, but.
I am well aware of that,
I know
Alan.
you are.
Anything further? Any public comment?
Public?
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to amend the contract with VSS International for the additional amount of $46,160.94, and authorize the city manager to approve a 10% for additional unforeseen contract amendments.
Motion is second. I think we do need a roll call on this. No? Out of money? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Negative. That takes us to our last agenda item. Go to reports. City manager?
Just a few items. As the council's aware, currently we have 2 projects under construction now, the Moss Davis project and Harbor Lane. So those are ongoing, and also we do have grading activities going on this week. We're also in preparation to start the Burns Valley Civic Center project, and as I believe I mentioned to the council before, we're still awaiting final approval from the California Transportation Commission on allocation of the $200,000 of funds. So Mr. Schwartz is going to be attending the CTC meeting on Wednesday, and to ensure that any questions the CTC has about the project we're able to address. Wanted to remind the community that if they do have weeds and tall grass on their property, it needs to be abated. The deadline for completing that was May 1st, and so if those conditions do continue to exist on your property, you can be open for citation and even potential liens on your property if the city has to abate that. We're spending a lot of time right now on budget preparation, preparing the budget for next fiscal year, which will be before the council in mid-June. We have brought on a GIS consultant that's going to be getting our GIS files into shape and developing an online GIS platform that will provide a lot of extra information to both staff and the public on everything from, you know, parcel information, zoning information, and so forth. We're continuing to try to push very hard to get the Austin Park plans finished. We found a few weeks ago that while they were supposed to be 90% complete, they were not quite at that level, and so we've been going back and forth with our designer to get those complete, because I do want to see shovels in the ground this year on that project yet. So we'll continue to keep you updated. I don't know if any of you made it to the circus on Sunday, but there were 2 shows. Chief White was there front and center as the honorary ringmaster at both shows. And they were considered sold out at 400 seats per show. They sold over 1,400 tickets between the 2 shows, so very well attended. I wasn't able to make it myself, but I understand it was a enjoyable event. So congratulations to the Chamber of Commerce, who, as a benefactor to that, brought in, I believe, almost $3,500 as a fundraiser for the chamber as part of that event. And then also, I just wanted to turn over to Chief White because he wanted to give a brief update on some of the new vehicle equipment that is in place.
Thank you. So just briefly, a while back, Councilman Harris had asked about AVL and the police cars for locating the police cars. So we did just deploy AVL to the patrol cars and actually all of our vehicles that have MDCs. So dispatch can see at any given time where the police cars are at. They can also get information regarding, we can set up basically zones. So if somebody goes into a zone, they can get an alert about issues in there, requests for extra patrol, that sort of thing. And we just signed the purchase order to get that functionality in the police cars for the officers to be able to see the map. So right now, dispatch can see the officers, but the officers can't see each other. Once it's in the police cars, they'll actually get like turn-by-turn directions, like a GPS, along with information about where calls are at and that sort of thing. So a significant amount of functionality, and actually credit to Lieutenant Hobbs, who figured out how to originally, we were looking at getting these external GPS devices were very expensive. He took apart the computer and figured out you could take one wire, put it on something existing in there, and then we worked together and we got it all working. So with existing things. So good job for doing the surgery.
Nice.
That saved us about, our alternative was about $800 to $1,000 per car to do a dedicated GPS, or we were going to have to basically like dangle a unit off of the laptop, which wasn't ideal. So. In either event, good stuff within that area, and it should be, hopefully within the next month, we'll get it rolled out to the cars. And then just for officer safety, we continue to deal with radio issues. This is one way to kind of buffet that just a little bit, and that if they call for help, they can at least figure out where the car's at. And then we hope to come back actually at the end of the month with some recommendations on the radio. Thank you.
Yeah, so just as a follow-up, if you see Lieutenant Hobbs out around town, you should probably buy him lunch, and that's my report.
That was going to be my question. Did he get something out of this? Lunch, heck, dinner, lobster and steak. Done? Joyce?
Okay, I did go to the circus. I was very lucky that I managed to find a seat, so got there just in time. Kids had a great time. Yes, when we see the chief, he did a great job too. Chamber did a good job on that. I really was happy to see that. So I'm glad it's a new thing maybe for our community to have every year. Just what I've been doing is I'm still working on some homeless housing stuff here to try to still get some more housing units here. We're working on getting the kitchen equipment upgraded at the community center, so we hopefully will have a new dishwasher, some equipment moved around there, what'll be a little more adequate for bigger events, especially when people come. We're going to be installing a sham, which I need to talk to you about, some help I might need. And so, that's mainly what I've been concentrating on, but main focus is still working on trying to get some housing here with the group that I was working on before, so that has not gone away. So hopefully we get something.
I didn't attend the circus, but I saw it go out, and we had some other business out of town. Also, I've been working with my fellow Councilman Kramer on the Hope Center, trying to get that thing moving along. I think because we talked to Mr. David Santos a couple of days back, it started to move forward again, hopefully. So, at some point in time, we probably need to talk some money and see how we can push that along. Then I want to kind of shout out to a lady named Molly Lang. I don't know if you know her. She took a big empty lot between Pearl and Robinson and Elvita, and I think, did you make a video of it?
I was the producer of that video.
She has a great idea about trying to make gardens out of these empty lots. Amazing lady, and she was also part of the group that did the landscaping around the new sign up at Lakeshore and 53. Also, another person that I met along the way is he lost his house at the bottom of Gooseneck, and he was so frustrated with trying to deal with his insurance company that he decided just to start on it himself and which is, shows a lot of guts to do that. So shout out to him. His name is Hans. If you see him working out there, big heavy German accent, but he's a good dude. So that's my report.
All right, mine's pretty straightforward. I was out of town, but I did have Mr. Bruno back there, our supervisor, fill in for me in a DJing operation at the South Shore Little League. I had last minute committed to that and didn't look at my calendar, and then I was in full panic mode, and he stepped in and entertained the children, and I really appreciate you doing that, Bruno. And then I did miss the circus, having been out of town, but I'm a bit of a circus myself, so that's about it. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. This past couple days ago, I attended the Area Planning Commission and Lake Transit Authority meeting along with Mr. Leonard and Supervisor Sabatier. And I guess the highlights of that, and you fellows can add to this if you want, is that the Highway 53, Highway 20 roundabout has actually started now. Projected completion is fall of 2019, this fall. Some people thought it was 2020, but we're told it's this fall. And the Hartman Road roundabout, which has been under construction for more than a year, is also scheduled to be completed this fall. Highway 29 Expressway, they're looking, they're getting closer on, they've done a lot of design work. You probably, if you could drive that road, you probably see flags and stakes out there where they're doing surveying in response to that. That'll be a much needed project. Caltrans also indicated that they're going to be conducting a Highway 53 corridor study to see which is a step in the right direction to see what we need on our Highway 53. The traffic on it, as you all know, is getting heavier and heavier, and we are having situations with accidents. Supervisor Sabatier mentioned it'd be nice to have a wall on it to keep pedestrians off of it, and that's would be certainly part of something that I hope they consider. Quite honestly, I think at some point it needs to go to a freeway. And, there were other things mentioned, but those were the highlights. Did I miss anything that you think I should bring before anybody? All right. And then we got our update on our emergency evacuation shelter project progress. We received the transfer of a permit from Golden State Water to City of Clearlake for the community center property, which was kind of the last thing holding us up for connecting to that sewer. Spoke with the contractor that we've chosen to work on it, and he is putting it in his timeline, and I'm hoping that that'll be done before the end of the month, which just then leaves us the ability to pour the slab and get the trailer in place and everything hooked up and be ready for the summer, hopefully not fire season, but PG&E has indicated that they're going to probably be even quicker on pulling the plug during red flag days, which could potentially put the lights out in Clear Lake, or certainly in surrounding areas where that evacuation shelter could definitely be put into use, even if it's not a fire. That's about all I have to say.
I've never asked for one.
Yes.
In fact, it's not really a redo for me. It's a redo for our supervisor while he's down there chit-chatting. So, Bruno, do you want to come up here and tell about the meeting that you're going to have at the community center?
Vision.
I just figured it was better that he present it, and that way the community can kind of know exactly what it's about. Thank you. I just figured I'd pull you right up here. You like that, right?
Very unorthodox.
We know you don't like to talk.
We know you don't like to be out.
So on May 14th, Tuesday at 1 p.m. next week, over at the Highlands Community Senior Center, the county, led by the Director of Public Health, Denise Pomeroy, has organized a panel of healthcare professionals to discuss the what healthcare measures we've progressed in and what healthcare measures we would like to progress in, but it's also mainly to get input from the community to find out what are the needs of the community when it comes to healthcare. What are some of the holes that we want to see filled? So everybody is invited. I know I spoke to Councilmember Overton because I wanted to make sure that we got the input from our senior citizens who are a very vulnerable population when it comes to healthcare. And it happens that she has a big day on Tuesday where there's going to be a lot of people at her senior center. So I'm excited about the event, and I hope that everybody can join us and listen in to see what it is that people would like to see in the future when it comes to healthcare. Thank you.
So they could come down and have lunch beforehand. You know, we serve lunch down there from 11:30 to 1, so this is going to be right after lunch. So if you're 60 and over, it's just a donation. If you're under 60, it's $8, and you get soup, salad bar, and your entree. So come join us. That's a plug for the senior center, by the way.
I don't have a lot. I've been doing anything for the last couple of weeks, but I do guess I need to announce that this will be my last council meeting. I'm stepping down due to some health reasons I need to have addressed, physical, not mental.
Are you sure?
For those of you who've known me for several years. So I want to thank not only my fellow council members, my past council members I served with, the city staff, including City Hall, Public Works, Police Department and all. It has been truly an honor. So thank you very much. I'm telling you, Chuck, that's what it is.
We have a little city manager.
I think we all should go down.
Laura, a little something for you.
Wayne did bring cookie?
I thought there'd be a next time. I didn't know.
I'm keeping your phone up.
First of all, Nick, I want to say that it's been a genuine pleasure working with you. Your wisdom, your quiet wisdom, when you talk is to say something. It's not just to talk. I've always appreciated that, and I've learned a lot from you. I will truly miss you, and as I'm sure the rest of the council will. So I'm going to read this plaque, presented to S. Nick Bennett, City Council Member, 2016 to 2019, Mayor, 2019, in appreciation, City of Clearlake. Nick.
Thank you. Did it right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. You girl. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, meeting's adjourned. Chuck, don't take off. I need to talk to you.
I'm going to miss you.
I'm gonna miss you. And here you go, a bath.